Well, a big move happened yesterday, and the top cornerback in the transfer portal is now off the market. Tacario Davis, who played his first 3 seasons at Arizona, is headed to Washington, and he's rejoining his former cornerback coach and head coach there at Washington. So you have a really unique profile on this guy, 6'4", 190, which that length and his movement ability really is kind of unprecedented at that position. So you look at what Washington's getting here, and again, for him, a decision where he has some familiarity with the coaching staff that has to go a long way here. DB coach John Richardson coached him in 2023 at Arizona. Jedd Fisch obviously was his head coach at Arizona and now Washington. So one of the most highly rated guys here in the portal. PFF in 2023 had a very high grade on him. Kind of dipped a bit this season in terms of what those numbers looked like, but not too many guys walking around at this position who can bring you what Tacario Davis brings.
Yeah, it's amazing Arizona played such bad defense. When you look at some of the guys that they had on their roster, yet Tacario Davis, number 1 cornerback in the portal, according to 247 and on 3. Emmanuel Carnley on the other side, another 6'3" corner, number 6 corner in the portal, according to 247, chose Miami over Ole Miss and Michigan. Like, how did these guys struggle so much? What happened at Arizona this year that allowed guys like this to struggle? So you look at the numbers with Tacario Davis. Obviously, he's been on the NFL radar for a while just because of the size, right? Coming out of Long Beach, 6'4", 190. It's such a unique profile at corner. Of course, his other corner, Carnley, who we mentioned, 6'3". Very unique profile. 2023, the guy was lights out. That's when I think the first round buzz started to pick up. 84.2 PFF grade, 42% completion rate allowed, 1 INT, 15 pass breakups, 85.9 coverage grade. Guys, those are astronomical numbers when you combine it with the physical dimensions. That is why he was projected so high. Then you go back to this year, same player, from 84 down to 61 Pro Football Focus overall grade, 54% completion percentage allowed, up from 42%. Coverage grade, again, down from 85.9. So those numbers tell the story. Same player, same team, different coach, and a much different profile in terms of production. So he's hoping, go back with John Richardson, boost up that NFL stock. Very rare you see an NFL corner like this come back, right? So obviously he didn't like what he was hearing from the NFL, and he thought that, he really is a first-round player. He's the player that you saw in 23. So goes to a school in Washington that different regimes, but historically has been one of the best schools and one of the best programs as far as producing NFL defensive backs. I mean, they have about, guys like Trent McDuffie, probably the best or one of the best corners in the NFL, of course, from Washington. Plenty others over the years, going back to, Marcus Peters and before that. So this is a program that's done it at the cornerback position.
Budda Baker too, yeah.
Budda Baker, Elijah Molden. They've had a lot of guys that can play ball. Kyler Gordon from the Chicago Bears. This has been a staple of the program. Again, Jedd Fisch, new to the program. This is a player that he knows, that he's comfortable with, that he's helped develop along with John Richardson into a potential first-round pick, now hoping to recreate the magic in the Pacific Northwest. Seems like a natural move, but my big takeaway, Pete, again, to have a guy that could go to pro at corner, which is very
Premier
much a traits, premier position, a traits position, not like a go back to school kind of position, right? Usually that's an underclassman dominated position in the draft. For him to come back, that shows you the changes with the college football landscape with NIL, where someone can say, listen, I can get money, real money in college, boost my stock, and then become a first rounder when I've had a disappointing year. This is a new phenomenon that's made possible, I think, by NIL and, of course, the portal.
Yeah, and I haven't spoken to scouts directly on Tacario Davis, but with his profile, would have been drafted probably in a comfortable mid-round situation just with his length and his movement ability right at that position, which is, we continue to say how unique it is. But so he, like you said, would have gotten drafted, but wants the opportunity to be a first-round pick, which if he regains his form and plays to a higher ability this season and puts better tape out there, quite frankly, then that could manifest itself for him. So you got to give him credit for, betting on himself and coming back here. But at the same time, I agree with you. The NIL, because he's probably getting a package similar to if he was a fourth round pick, fifth round pick. So
a great question here from Zach Lesnar is asking, our portal rankings, I mentioned Tacario Davis, number one on both major services. Are portal rankings based off high school, college production, combination of both? For example, how is Luke Kromenhoek the number 2 quarterback? Luke Kromenhoek, this is the FSU former borderline 5-star, goes to FSU for one season, shows some flashes, but not like any kind of spectacular production as a freshman, then transfers over to Mississippi State. Really a great move, I thought, by both parties. And, he's ranked as the number 2 quarterback. I think it's a bit of both, and it's an adjustment period. So last cycle, it was heavily weighted to high school rankings, heavily weighted to guys with multiple years of eligibility, and you had kind of absurd results. Like Cam Ward was like the number 4 portal quarterback, I think, ranking wise, which, the guys in New York, he's going to be the first quarterback drafted. Obviously, that was a terrible ranking, but they're adjusting, and I think still a little bit of both with a guy like Kromenhoek, who's not the number 2 quarterback in terms of what he can do for you next year, but has so many years of eligibility and physical tools. I think what they want, if I'm 247, just projecting what they on 3, I think if a guy transfers and gets drafted, they want to go back and have the right portal ranking on that draft pick, right? So like a guy like Jaden Daniels, he was not the most productive guy at Arizona State. I mean, he had some production, but it's not like his value from an on-field perspective and production standpoint was sky high when he left Arizona State. You can say the same thing about Bo Nix, but both those guys were high school 5-stars. Then they go to their new programs, and then they get drafted where they're drafted and perform where they perform. So I think if you're, one of these recruiting services, you want guys like that when you go back and look to say they are rated properly in their portal ranking, which is, again, a fusion of those two. A guy like Tacario, Davis, he was a 3-star coming out. You look at his stats, 85 ranking. He's the number 107 cornerback on the composite coming out of Long Beach, California, Millikan High School. So his high school ranking, I think, doesn't have anything to do with it. He's strictly based on what he's done in college and how he projects to the pros. But because he's so close to the pros, that I think they feel comfortable that we put a number 1 ranking on him. He has a good year at Arizona, goes to be a second first-round pick. It'll look good on them.
And look, it was obviously a big year of overture there at Washington with Jedd Fisch coming in, replacing DeBoer. Brought a lot of guys initially from Arizona with him, and now they get a big fish here in Tacario Davis. I expect that program to continue moving forward here. They do very well with the talent acquisition side of things, and Jedd Fisch can coach.
Absolutely. That's a program that, when I was growing up, it was a power. It's sort of been up and down the last couple decades, but, Chris Peterson did, and then what Kalen DeBoer did, it's here to stay. Jedd Fisch, I thought, overperformed a little bit, given what he lost. They basically had a whole new team at Washington, plus he's playing in the Big Ten, an incredibly difficult conference, maybe the best conference in college football right now, if we're being honest. So for him to at least stay above water at Washington his first year, I thought was a tremendous success. Kind of what it's amazing. Washington and Michigan, right? These were the 2 best teams in the country last year. And then they go back and have, seasons where you look on paper, you say mediocre. But to me, those were successful seasons given what they lost, what they're going against, and their ability to, basically hold competitiveness and then build to the future. I feel good about where both programs are. I agree, Zach. Washington's going to take a major leap next year with their young quarterback.